Now, continuing on with the Impressionist, a small spontaneous party. Jack, with Bernie standing beside him, introduced a rat-a-tat-tat knock upon Sheila's door with the knuckles of his left hand, Bernie having taken note of this trivial fact. They heard Sheila sing out that she'd be there in a moment. A minute or two passed as the men both grew restless, wondering what was the holdup. Soon Sheila pulled the door open and gawked at the two men, each of them receiving a slight variant of this look. Her pleased, expectant face instantly transformed into one of stark surprise when she glanced at Bernie, and then one of chagrin when her blue eyes flashed back once again to meet Jack's hopeful, cheery expression. "I see you've decided to bring along one of the guests from the show, Jack." "He met you the other night," Jack said, "at the Coconut Grove. He lives here, right up on the 4th floor. Now that's quite a coincidence, don't you think?" "Yes, Jack, I'm sure it's very remarkable." "Well, come in, guys, take a load off. You want anything to drink? Bernie, right?" Yes, on both counts," Bernie said, pleased that she had remembered his name. "A beer or scotch would be fine." "Make that the same for me, sweetheart. Whatever you got in there." "Then give me a minute while I fill up the ice bucket. Why don't you get the glasses, Jack?" "Make yourself at home, Bernie," she said, now glancing at him, taking in his gentle, predatory gaze. "It's really great to see you again." She pulled Jack into the kitchen and, with a whispering hiss, said, "Now why the hell did you bring him along? Can you tell me that?" "Well, hell, Sheila, I sure didn't think you'd be pissed about it." "Oh, it's cool. I just don't like surprises unless they happen to be a gift from a jewelry shop or a car dealer. Don't worry, baby. We'll just have a little party. How's that?" "Well, now you're talking. Besides, he said he wasn't going to stay very long." "More the merrier, sweetie," she said, and gave him a quick, nearly domestic kiss. "Well, don't just stand there. Get the glasses." The unexpected festive occasion in Sheila's apartment, having begun with an unopened bottle of Cutty Sark, was now well underway, the bottle of whiskey half consumed. The usual buttoned-up Bernie had fallen into a far more relaxed and casual mood during the diminishment of his first drink, and his now unguarded remarks had grown more numerous, even though Jack and Sheila were still doing most of the talking. And to be no less than completely frank, Bernie had begun to gaze at Sheila whenever she spoke with a greater aesthetic appreciation than he ordinarily allowed himself whenever he was in close proximity to any woman, and particularly the sort with the caliber of Sheila's striking appearance. She was wearing a dark sapphire-colored robe which presented to any onlooker, an unfettered view of her cleavage. The robe itself fastened with an amber-hued cloth belt. Her feet were bare, her toenails unpainted. Her fingernails, however, were painted a fiery scarlet, and they extended to an appreciable length beyond her thumb and fingertips. Her light blonde hair descended in ample waves down her back, well past her shoulders. During the more recent portion of their meandering conversation, she sometimes glanced away from Jack to Bernie for a quick moment, simply to gauge her surprised guest's expression, and she felt pleased to see his hazel-colored eyes remain fastened upon her. Growing tired of listening to yet another one of Jack's silly little anecdotes, she turned to Bernie and said, "Why don't you tell me more about your job at the Seattle Arts Commission?" "Oh, it's less glamorous than it sounds, Sheila. For about 80% of the time, I'm on the phone making cold calls to film companies. I've gotten good at keeping the tedium I sometimes feel out of my voice. You're a professional, she said approvingly. I suppose you could say that. You know, boys, I've just realized this. Both of you guys are kind of modest, each in your own way, of course, with Jack maybe a little less so. You've got to be the first person who's ever accused me of modesty, Jack said. As Bernie smiled, Sheila burst into laughter for a moment. Then she plucked up her Benson and Hedges smoldering in the ashtray, took a quick drag, and blew out a blooming conical cloud of smoke from her red lips, and she said, Jack, you just kill me sometimes. It's that lightning-quick mind of yours, I guess. As the hours quickly advanced towards midnight, Sheila excused herself at one point to make use of the facilities. But before entering her bathroom, festooned with bottles of shampoo and cosmetics, she ducked into the spare bedroom where she kept a desk, filing cabinet, and bookcase filled with computer manuals and software documentation, and she snatched a small box of her business cards from the desk drawer where she kept them. She removed the top card and then stuffed it into one of the pockets of her sapphire-colored bathrobe, hurried into the bathroom and flushed the toilet, ran a brush through her hair a few times, then reapplied some lipstick, and then returned to the living room. You boys missed me while I was gone? Absolutely pined away for you, darling, Jack said. She leaned over him, gave his cheek a quick love pinch, and said, I'm a lucky girl to have such a devoted suitor as you, Jack. Then she resumed her place on the sofa next to him, Bernie seated next to her immediate left in the rocking armchair. A few minutes later, Bernie rose from the armchair while suppressing a yawn and said that all of a sudden he felt tired and that he ought to go. Sheila jumped up from the sofa saying, I'll see you to the door, Bernie. As they stepped toward the door, Sheila took a quick glance over her shoulder at Jack, who picked up the newspaper laying on the coffee table. At the door, she slipped the card into his hand and whispered, Don't be a stranger, call me sometime. Then in a normal voice she said, Good night, Bernie. It was really nice seeing you again. If you ever need your computer fixed, I'm your girl. Yes, it's been fun. Unexpected and fun. Take care, Jack. Yeah, see you around, pal, said Jack, still hunched over and looking down at the newspaper. The morning after the strictly social and platonic menage a trois at Sheila's place, on the second floor as I had discovered, I felt like hell. I finally rolled out of bed around 10 o'clock, staggered still half asleep into the bathroom, and fired away a great rushing stream of piss into the toilet. Following a lazy, lingering session in the shower, I shut off the hot water and let the cold water shake me fully awake. I decided to hell with giving myself a shave. After all, it was Saturday, and I wouldn't be going to work. No one would give a shit what I looked like. After a breakfast of toast and coffee, I considered writing a letter to Justine. I had been intending to do so for a while now, resume our intermittent correspondence, but since I still felt like crap, I decided to put off my letter to her until Sunday. Downing my fourth glass of water, then puffing a few moments later on my pipe, which I always fill with various ratios of tobacco and cannabis, I began to feel a bit better. I'd put the card Sheila had given me on the kitchen table, which is where it had remained all morning. At first I was reluctant to call her, thinking it would be better if I waited a week just to prove to her that I wasn't salivating at the mouth or just imagining her. But she had given me her business card, presenting both her work number and her private number. So clearly she wanted me to call her, and by mid-afternoon I did call her. I think by middle age, men either remain befuddled by women for the rest of their lives, or they come to realize that they have much to learn from these same women who have been intimately conscious of their own feelings from day one. And I've come to believe that that is the stark and fundamental distinction between the two sexes. In the department of emotions and feelings, generally speaking, men are plain oafs. Between the ministers and the priests, the psychologists and the shrinks, collectively they must have a pretty fair idea of the feelings and motivations driving men to act as they do. Most men being either morons or cripples in their sense of their own inner emotional lives. Most of us men learn over years to merely suppress troublesome feelings and allow only our sense of amusement and outrage to be displayed in public. Amusement, outrage, or otherwise a steely cold rationality. Without the literature and film produced by women, we men would remain forever completely in the dark about them, particularly their view of the world, as well as the ways they allow themselves to manipulate us, sometimes like marionettes, as in the case of the subservient, compliant husband. Within the bounds of the imagination, a unique venue in which anything is possible, we men frequently enjoy and indulge in spectacles of savagery, or the far more simple fantasies of a slugfest. And out of this has arisen a continual slurry of westerns, crime thrillers, and martial arts films. It seems very few film directors ever evolve past this, with some notable exceptions, in particular including Ingmar Bergman and Federico Fellini. Following this short period of reflection indulged in only this prior moment, whether inherently capable of curiosity's arousal or not, I dialed Sheila's personal cell phone number. Her phone surely includes a call recognition app, because she answered on the third ring and said, "Bernie, what a nice surprise. Well, I guess all three of us tied one on last night. Jack's still out like a light." I had a swell time, Sheila. You know, I'd sometimes wondered, ever since that night I met you, why I never heard a cab pull up in front of the building shortly after you'd slipped out of bed. You weren't asleep? I was positive you were fast asleep still when I left. No, my eyes were closed, but I was merely remaining as inanimate as one of those proverbial logs. You're a sneaky one. Well, sometimes. Well, I'm out in the kitchen now, and the bedroom door is closed, so I can talk normally. That lunk in my bedroom won't hear a thing. He never gets up before 1 o'clock. You must not see him too often, the way he has to travel around and all. Well, his schedule's worse than a long-haul trucker's, and I should know. I had one for a boyfriend once, years ago. The time really flies. I'd say it'll be a while before time ever flies past you, Sheila, I said. We girls do our best to keep looking like fashion models, but time always catches up in the end. Oh hell, Sheila, you're light years away from that. I may have to start calling you a silver-tongued devil. With you, everything I just said is true, unaccountably and irrefutably true. Oh, that's sweet. But it's true, Bernie. Jack is hardly ever around. And he's the kind of guy who has a girl in every other port. I just happen to be his principal squeeze, she said. Not that I'm complaining. It is what it is, I suppose. Well, as long as you're at least tolerant of the situation. It's hardly like I'm sitting home every night knitting in another Afghan. Of course not. I go out now and again, like that night we met at the Coconut Grove, which left me with a very pleasant set of memories, by the way. Bernie, could you call me, say, the middle of next week? By then Jack will have returned to the road. That's his phrase. Well, Sheila, I guess I'll be returning to the road now. I'll look forward to calling you again, I have to say. How would you simply like to drop in for dinner next Wednesday instead? That'd be great, Sheila. I can cook just about anything. Even better, I'll be looking forward to it. We said goodbye to one another. I set my cell phone aside on the arm of the sofa, and at that moment I felt quite elated, on top of the world. And from that moment, I began to anticipate our upcoming Wednesday evening together.